Welcome to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hammond, and on today's episode, we're chatting with Andrew Tokeley, or Tokes as he's officially named. Tokes didn't walk 100 Ks to get to this podcast today, but I wish he did, and you'll understand a little bit more about that now on the podcast, so enjoy.
Kia ora. Thanks for tuning in to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
You probably saw I just took my daughter recently to Europe because it was really important for me, for my kids to see the world before they sort of hit their formative years and just have that empathy of the world and understand that, you know, we've got it pretty good here and that if you want to make something of your life, you've got to go out and get it. And yeah, and my daughter's now I've like ignited a fire. She just wants to travel. And so she just told me yesterday, actually, she's like, Dad, can you help me find my first job? You know, I'm 14 now. I want to make money because I want to be able to take a gap year. And so I want to start saving. And I'm like, awesome. Scares the shit out of me, but awesome.
Super organised though.
Yeah.
You're thinking about that at 14.
Oh, that's all she wants to do is travel. So she wants to work in fashion and technology. That's her thing. And so she's chosen a high school off the back of that. But she said that I want to spend a year off before I go to university. And I'm like, good on you.
Love it. Yeah. So now I get to spend more time with my 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Who's the only kid left at home. And so we will spend way more time together now than when both kids are around. I've got twice as much attention. She probably doesn't want it, but she comes walking with me. We're training to walk 100K at the moment, so she's kind of wants to beat her brother who joined me the last time I did a walk like that. And
it wasn't just a walk.
Well, there's walks and walks, right? This is just me going. A few years ago, 5 years ago, I thought, oh shit, I reckon I could walk 100K in one go. Just go.
Is that when you did it from the Wairarapa?
Yeah. So I left home at 12 midnight something, and just started walking. And I'd mapped out a route that I wanted to go up the Hutt River, up to the Rimatucker and climb and back. So a flat route. But I just want to see, can I walk 100K in 20 hours? Yeah. And turns out I can, and like with two minutes to spare, literally. And it was actually a lot harder than I thought. Like 70K, I was like, yeah, this is actually, this is hurting now.
What are hurting your feet and your legs? And
so you've got to look after your feet, right? So it's not about, am I the fittest person in the world? So there's a mental aspect to it, which is big. And then there's if your feet start churning up and getting blisters, then it can make it pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. So my feet were starting to turn at around the 70K mark. And mentally I was starting to hurt because I'd started with a friend. He lasted 50K with me and said, he probably just to train.
The designer guy?
Andy Hovey. Yeah. So he came out with me fresh with no training. He's a young buck, he thought he could knock it off, right? And he got to 50K or so and he goes, actually, probably could have done with a bit of training on this. And so he kind of tapered out. And so I had like this 20K in the middle on my own in the hardest part of the walk. And so I remember sitting on a park bench at 70K, phoning home, going, "Yeah, this is actually starting to hurt a bit." Yeah. And then another couple of friends joined me for the last 20, 30K and picked me up again and managed to.
But that must have been like, my whole life is about finding my comfort zone and then increasing that, right? And so I do things that scare me, and a lot of that came back from a person walking the length of Australia. So one of my mates, one of his friends died of cancer, and so he decided that he was going to raise money for that charity, and so he sold his house, sold everything, and bought a pram, and put all his possessions in that he wanted to walk, and he walked from the whole way around Australia, like the whole perimeter, and it was inspiring. I'd like stay tuned with his blog, and it wasn't social media, it wasn't such a thing back then, so you'd have to read his blog and see little videos he'd upload, but then unfortunately, to celebrate, finally finished, and to celebrate, he flew to Thailand and he got hit by a car and died. No way. And so I'd said, all right, off the back of him now, I'm going to do, every 10 years, I'm going to do things that scare the shit out of me. And so I've got this list of things now, 40 before 40, 50 before 50 now, and so.
I heard you say that on another podcast, and I remember thinking to myself, I sometimes beat myself up for not going out of my comfort zone as much as I could, right? Yeah. Like I know what I'm good at.
But that's your comfort zone. You hit 70Ks, right? And you're like, not a lot of people would have given up then, right?
But I didn't do 100K because I didn't think I could. I did 100K because I'm a fit guy. I love.
But didn't you then do a bigger one again?
Oh, so then I did another 100 with my son. I made the mistake of saying to my son, I said, this was a year or two later. I said, man, I really enjoyed training for that 100. It was motivational for me. I liked having this goal. I'm not really a goal person, but the physical goal, I really like that. And I'm going to do it again. And he goes, oh, yeah, that'd be easy. This is when he was 15.
Yeah.
And I said, I probably shouldn't say it. I'm embarrassed that I said this. So I said, I'll give you $1,000 if you finish it with me.
Yeah.
And he goes, sign me up. And I've never seen a more motivated 15-year-old in my life.
You could have said $20.
I know, right? I totally aimed too high too early. And so to his credit, like we trained, I said, you've got to have knocked off a 40 before we do the 100.
Yeah.
Like that's, if you can do 40 and not be broken, you can probably do it again in a bit and be okay. You can, adrenaline comes into it and stuff like that. So we did a lot of training walks. I used to walk into to 8i. I used to walk to work from Eastbourne in the morning. I'd get up early at 5:30, be at work at 8:30 still. Like it was.
I remember that was weird.
Yeah, it was cool. And no, that was. I think I need that more than I recognize.
Yeah.
I say I'm not a goal person.
Yeah.
But then I'll do something like that, and I'm like, I'm all in. Like I'm the guy. If I make up my mind to do something, I'm totally doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't back down. But it'll take me a while to get to that point, and I feel at times that I'm risk averse to go that push because I know once I tell people, it's happening, right? And
once you socialize it, it's a thing, right?
It's a thing, right? Yeah. So he did it. He got his money, bought his computer. He wanted a computer to play Fortnite.
Yeah.
And then last month, I said to my daughter, I said, I think I'm doing 100 again. I'm feeling all energetic again. And she goes, actually, no. She came to me. That's right. She came to me and said, I want to beat Dan. My son's called Dan. And Lucas said, I want to beat Dan because I'm 14. He was 15 when he did it. And I want to do it faster than him because she's like.
What was your time?
Well, she hasn't done it yet. So we're trying.
What was his time?
His time. So I did it in 20. Dan did it in 22 and a half, which was really good for a young kid. Didn't complain at all. And I actually felt really good in that walk, and having done not more training, but because I focused on him and we went slightly slower, it was like, felt like I was quite fresh when I finished it. But it was like really good. I don't know if he'll look back on it and go, that was amazing to do that with Dad. Or
but the relationship that you would have taken, the memories and the chats that you would have had along the way.
Yeah, and just having a joint, somewhat weird experience together.
Yeah.
Even the fact that he's traveling now.
You'll remember that for the rest of his life.
Oh, totally. And so getting Luca to train. So she's now saying, so $1,000, right? I'm going, look, you get a few things that done. She does a horse thing. We're driving her out to do the horse thing every few days, it seems. So I'm going, that calculates in. You're doing all right. You're doing all right.
Good luck. Yeah.
We're still in negotiation mode. But I think she'll be great, and I think she will. We're thinking of doing it before she goes back to school. So we've got another few weeks to go.
Oh, shit. And she training? Or?
Yeah, so we did a 25er yesterday or 2 days ago. And
awesome.
She looked pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's more a mental game.
I hope you've had a vasectomy now, mate. It's costing you a lot of money.
I know, right? No more kids. I can't handle it. I can't keep up with them. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. And so you, what made you do it in the first place? What was it that you just decided one night, midnight, I'm going to put my backpack on and walk to the Wairarapa?
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know. I think I've always liked physical.
Did you run or anything like that?
No, I just wanted to walk it. I didn't. I don't. I actually don't know. I don't know what inspired me, and I don't know what inspired me to walk to Tararoa.
Yeah.
Like last year, and I thought, I'll walk the length of New Zealand, and it was just out of nowhere that sometimes these things come to me, and I do miss it if I don't have. Something. And years can go by, right? And I'll be in my work and I'm doing my thing and I'm all good, but I just miss some of those external challenges that are. And the 100 was probably inspired by the Oxfam 100.
Yeah.
And I probably saw that online somewhere and thought, I'd love to walk 100, but I don't want to do it with 1,000 other people.
Yeah.
Cameras, lights, action, time, pressure, support crew. That didn't interest me, but the actual physical challenge really appealed to me. And so I think that inspired me.
And what was the dopamine like after finishing?
Yeah, when I did it on my own, high.
Yeah.
Like I was.
But you were followed along because I remember it was like people were live tweeting it or something. And
yeah, I was probably using Facebook at the time, and I was raising money. So the first time I raised money for cancer. So my father passed away of cancer some years, 20 years ago or something. But so I raised some money for the Cancer Society. And then my mother passed away, and that was possibly the inspiration for the second time I did it. My mother passed away a few years ago, and so I raised money for Alzheimer's. And Luca and I have yet to decide what we might raise money for this time.
Awesome.
There's nothing personal in my life that's directing me to raise money for anything particular, but there's lots of worthy causes out there, right?
Yeah, get her to choose. It's her walk, right? And
so I'm trying to get her to think of something, and I think she's thinking maybe around mental health. They're confronted with it a lot at school. I've had my challenges. My son's had his challenges, and so it's kind of like maybe. And even Luca's very open about talking about when she's feeling stressed or anxious.
Isn't that amazing that these days, like my kids talk about it as well, like what they learned about at school. Man, my generation, I was told to shut the hell up.
Yeah, you wouldn't even bring it up, right?
No, you're too scared.
I do worry whether it's going too far the other way, whether it's too easy to say, oh, yeah, I'm this, or I'm that label. But I think I'd rather that than completely internalizing everything and not even contemplating getting help or so I'm really proud that she sort of said that. Whether I don't know how significant it is, and we talk about it and stuff, but it's good that it's out in the open.
I think like there will be life definition moments taking those two kids on doing something like that, because like, especially with your son, right, didn't find his way at school, but then it was able to achieve a huge moment in his life, like a walk 100 Ks. Like that's one of these things that you can look back on and say, actually, I can do this. I did that. And
I'm proud of him being in Canada. He got himself. We did nothing. His idea. He called the agency. They didn't actually help in the end, so he had to find his own job.
Yeah.
Got himself there with his visa application, which was a nightmare. It's worse than ours in Canada.
Yeah.
Got himself there, working, doing pretty well. Decides on his own back to get himself to Mexico. Works out the flights.
Awesome.
Checks his insurance. Gets there. Didn't go with anyone. He tried to go with a mate, but that fell through. So he went on his own. I mean, that's pretty cool for a 19-year-old. I wouldn't have done that at 19. I wouldn't have had the balls.
Yeah.
I was a lot older when I sort of did that stuff. But he's grown up with a lot of that travel stuff. So we've traveled a lot with the kids. So he's probably got some of that confidence from knowing that it's not that hard.
Because you kind of did that though, right? You did a gap year before you went to university, right? And went off banana picking and traveling Asia and stuff.
Well, so I did it after university. So I was very sensible. So I thought, I'll get my university done. But it was always going to be my path was always going to go overseas. And I think it's probably changed. Maybe it's coming back again, but certainly with COVID, it's not. But when I was growing up, it was very common for people to go on their OE, and it wasn't like the UK. I used to kind of like laugh at the gap year idea that the UK people talked about, and going, a year is not enough.
Yeah,
like I need more than a year. Although to be fair, I did get a year return ticket to London via Nepal, Thailand, India, and I was in India. I was about 2 months into India. I'd almost been away for 6 months, hadn't even got to London at that stage, and I remember saying to myself, there is no way I'm finishing this trip in a year.
Yeah.
And so I cashed in my round the world ticket when I got to London and was away for 3 years.
Awesome.
And I'm hugely naive, right? Like I had people worry now about, oh, fuck, what am I going to do for a career? Or what training should I do? Which job am I going to have? Like, I mean, you hear it all the time, right? Like, I mean, and I did not question that. I had this either blind faith or massive naivety that will sort itself out.
Yeah.
I've done the groundwork. I've got a degree.
Is that because you had a degree that you felt like you had something to fall back on regardless?
Well,
because I had that.
maybe.
But I had that without the degree. I was just like, stupid white dude arrogance or whatever it is, right? Like I was just like, I'll be fine whatever I do.
I think I grew up in a very secure environment, loving parents. I mean, they had the challenges, right? But like, I wasn't anxious about life.
Yeah,
it worked out for my parents. I assumed it would work out for me.
Yeah,
there was nothing I could look around and model fear off.
Yeah, like
a lot of people have. It's just there, and they go, well, shit, I want that to happen to me. But I just feel I was very lucky to not see or feel any of that. And so had this naivety to think, and I didn't have any career thoughts about going to London and getting lots of money.
What did you do in London?
Well, in London, I was a cycle courier. So a push bike courier, because I was into cycling and I wanted to do some cycle touring. So I thought, it'd be a good way to get fit. And so I had my bike with me. And so rocked up to this place on off Oxford Street. I'd found them in the what was that magazine they used to have, TNT magazine in London.
Yeah.
And I found this courier company hiring, and I went and just rocked up and said, hey, I've never been to London before in my life, well, that I could remember. And can I work for you? And he goes, where are you from? I go, I'm from New Zealand. And he goes, oh, yeah, you're hired. And so just because good Kiwi attitude, he knew you'd work hard and wouldn't fuck around.
This is pre-GPS, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my A to Z book, this physical book.
I remember the A to Z well, yeah.
And I barely could find myself from one end of Oxford Street to the other.
Yeah.
And what they do, my call sign was Alpha 91. So they'd go, Alpha 91, Berwyn's West 1. And I'd go, what? Alpha 91, Berwyn's West 1. And what he means was Alpha 91, that's me. Yep, got it. I'm listening. Berwyn's, that's the client.
Yeah.
You've got to know where they are.
Yeah.
That happen to be on London Bridge. And West 1 is where the parcel that you're going to pick up is going.
Oh, wow.
So they just ramble that off as fast as they can, and you just have to say, I don't know what you're talking about. And you should do that for a few days.
Where's West 1?
Yeah, where's West 1 and who the hell are Berwyn's?
Yeah.
And so you gradually get into it, but I really enjoyed that. It was one of my most enjoyable jobs. There was a little bit of competitiveness to it, and that, you had to go fast to be able to get the next job. So you had to call and say, I'm free, I'm ready for the next one, and you wait there on the side of a road somewhere and wait for them to call you in again. And
good way to get to know London too.
And I know London really well. Like when I've been back, it's like, I remember this. Although it's interesting because I go back there and I go on the tubes, and I never used the tube back then. I just cycled around the street, so I don't know where the tubes pop up. So they'll pop up in the middle of West 1, and I go, where the hell am I? And but when I'm walking around, I recognise
I'm
it
the same
better.
because when I first got to London, my mate was working at a letting agency, and he was like, you could do this? And I was like, all right. And so I did it for 3 months, and I just drove around London everywhere.
Yeah.
And so then when I went back again, the same thing. I was in the tubes, and I was just so disorientated all the time because I'd pop up and go, oh, I don't know where. That's where I am.
Yeah, totally. So I did that, and then I worked in a ski resort for 2 seasons, back to back 2 seasons. Learned how to ski. Hadn't really skied before then.
Yeah.
I was a EPH, extra pair of hands. So I pretty much did whatever I had to do. Like I had to learn the numbers to be able to buy the baguettes in the morning.
Yeah.
And then clean
Were you with your wife, traveling with your wife?
No, I hadn't met Nick then. I met her in Israel. So when we were both working on a kibbutz. So it was another thing I did. Worked on a kibbutz for a while as a volunteer.
Wow.
And that's where I was picking bananas.
Yeah.
And she was working in the kitchens like all the women did in the kibbutz. They're very divided there.
And bananas grow on the ground.
Not these ones. These were
Tree bananas.
banana trees.
I watched a documentary recently, and I was really surprised. All the dole bananas in Hawaii,
Oh, interesting.
they're all ground bananas.
Well, the other thing, I saw something about bananas recently. Who knew we'd be talking about bananas? But that some people cut the whole tree down to get the banana bunch off. And I'm going, well, that seems a bit wasteful. And we never did that. So we had these. One of the proudest moments of my life, which is a little bit tragic, is that I'd been on this banana plantation for a few weeks. So I was getting the hang of it. And one of the things you have to do is catch a bunch of bananas. So you stand under a bunch of bananas, which are, I don't know, 40 kgs. They're pretty big, heavy. You hold onto the stem of it, and you sort of rest your hand on the side of it. And someone else, one of the experts, has this long knife on the end of a stick. And you're there trying to take the weight of it. You're not quite sure how heavy it is at this point. And then they'll cut it. And you have to
They're just swinging above your hand.
Yeah. And then you have to take it gradually onto your shoulder. And then you walk with it to the truck and you put it on the truck. And I got pretty good at this. I was young, 20-something, right? And then newbies would come in as volunteers, and they'd be shown how to do it. And my proudest moment when I was chosen by this veteran banana picker. He's like, Tokes, you come and show them how to do this, buddy. You're pretty good.
Is that why it's on your Twitter bio?
Yeah. I'm so proud. Still proud. I'm still living off it. Yeah.
And then so met your wife, came back to New Zealand.
So I met my wife, said goodbye to my to-be partner, and we sort of, got together overseas. I was heading back. She's from Holland, yeah, and spent a bit of time overseas together. Did a couple of things, and then I came back. So I was kind of ready for my come back to New Zealand moment. Yeah. So I think I spent 4 months coming back, traveling back to New Zealand, and so we kind of said goodbye and said, "Hey, it was great, but I'm going back, and you've got your own life." And so we kind of left at this weird openness moment where classic Kiwi, didn't really show my emotions very well. So I was like, see you later. Yeah. And I got back, and then and we kept in touch, and we both saw someone else during that time as well. So we were it was over, right? But we kept in touch, and then about a year after I got back, I remember we had a couple of letters. We did letters back then, and I wrote to her and I said, "Oh look, I reckon we either keep something going here, or let's just stop sending these letters to each other because it's killing me." And because I hadn't really let go. I was finding it hard to sort of get my life going back in New Zealand. It's hard coming back from 3 years away to come back. Your friends have all moved on.
Yeah.
So it was a tough period of time. And to my surprise, she goes, yeah, come on over.
Oh, wow.
And so I booked a ticket back to Holland, and then, the rest is history, as they say. And so we got back together, and that was 27 years ago now.
Awesome, and she's lovely. I've been her a few times. She's really lovely.
She's a keeper,
obviously. And so then, is that when you started at Intergen?
So Nick and I had this amazing life pre-kids. Kids, if you're listening, it was amazing after we had kids as well. But we had this other life, different, good, where we would literally spend a few months working in one of either Holland or New Zealand.
Yeah.
And then travel for 3 months or 3.5 months. We'll go to Asia a lot, South America, different places around the world, and spend 3.5 months traveling back to the other country. And we did that for about 4 years, and it was amazing. Yeah. And got to, and could only do that really because I was at the time a contract engineer, software developer.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of easy to do that.
Yeah.
And the contract market was hot, so wherever I was, I could always find something to do, and it didn't matter if it was only for 7 or 8 months. Nobody cared. There was like a 6-month contract, and
perfect.
It was like the perfect lifestyle.
I'm surprised more people don't contract, to be honest.
Well, to be fair, what's interesting about my career arc is that I actually feel like I'm closing in on that circle.
Yeah.
Because Darn's off, Luca in a few years, she'll do her own thing, and then there'll be Nick and I. Both love travel. We both have, me more than Nick, but we're both self-employed. But my career I could take with me to a degree, and could turn it on and off a little bit. She could she's an interior designer. She could also do the same thing. And I could imagine her spending a few months away from New Zealand, seeing some other part of the world. I mean, it's not a very environmentally friendly lifestyle anymore, but maybe if we only do it once a year, maybe it's not so bad. Yeah. But they would be back to our 20-something life.
Man, that's my future. Like as soon as the kids are flying the coop, I'm just working in different countries.
You can
wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing good about COVID, I guess it's taught us that we can be anywhere in certain jobs. We can be anywhere.
And life's short, right? Like you get past 40 and your mortality starts looking.
Oh, dude, I'm past 50 now, and it's like, it only gets shorter.
Yeah. And so you're contracting to Intergen?
No, I had never had a full-time job until I was 30.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty crazy.
It's awesome, right? So I had this lifestyle until I was about 30, I guess, and then the contract market died.
Yeah.
And I couldn't just pick up another contract. I remember who was I with? One of your competition.
Yeah.
I remember calling them up and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm ready for another one." And they go, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, there's not much going on at the moment." And so I remember sitting, and we just bought our first home, and I remember sitting there going, "Fuck, I can't get a job. I can't get a contract, right? What am I going to do?" And so I literally, I said to the agent, I said, "I think I'm probably going to have to go permanent." And it was like I was deeply upset by this prospect, but it kind of worked out because I joined Intergen, and I fell in love with the art of building software.
Yeah.
And there were people, JB, JJ, some people I met who were top of their game software developers who took me under their wing.
They had a real good crew there at that stage.
Derek Watson, there was a few of them there who I really got on well with. Yeah. I was just in awe of they weren't fucking around cycle crewing in London. Yeah. They were building their muscle around software. And so I learned a huge amount in those early years about software development as a craft, and became really interested in technology. Even got so into it that I became a Microsoft MVP for a while there.
Yeah.
I picked up on this very fringe technology and got really good at that, and actually did a bit of user group stuff. And so I was interested even then in giving back to the community and being part of a community, which has come back in my more recent career. But very quickly moved from, I was there 7 years, which, going from never having a full-time job to the first one being 7 years was good effort. But I really loved it. And until I didn't, and then I moved on. But I remember a few years in, there was one release we did where I was pretty much the lead engineer.
Yeah.
It was for immigration, I think. It was a big deal. It was like a big client. And we released it, and it just sat there on the home screen spinning. And we've been testing this for months, and I remember thinking, fuck, what have I done? What have I done? I've never been so stressed in my career as that moment. And it turned out something I had done had caused this infinite loop in this production release that was going out and luckily there was this little thing I could do, this little flag I could turn off, which wasn't ideal because it was intended to do something, but we could live without it. And it came back alive. And I think that probably was the tipping point for me where I don't need the stress. That was full on. And it was like, I have a deep respect for engineers and what they do, because I know how complex the stuff they do is and how hard it is to make stuff work.
Especially agency, tight time frames on a shoestring budget.
Because you're not given a lot of money. You don't have other people who know what you're doing because you're just the one person or the two or three of you doing it, right? So you specialize in there. And so I found that terrifying. And I don't know whether I wasn't good at it, but I was taking the fun out of the beauty of the craft that I'd learned from some of those Intergen guys. Yeah. And so I stopped almost immediately, well, not almost immediately, but I stopped coding and became more of they called them solution architects. Yeah. I remember loving going to a new client and talking about the potential of what we could build for them and going on those tech sales call those pre-sales calls.
Do you think that all your traveling up to 30 and your lifestyle, though, was the reason why you were so good as a leader and client-facing product person? Because...
Yeah, possibly. I think because I describe myself, I'm an introvert in that I recharge on my own. Yeah. I'm that part of the introvert, but I love people as well. Like I like... being around people, but it just exhausts me. Yeah. And then I have to go off into the bush somewhere, right? Yeah. And so when I am with people, and because I've traveled a lot and seen lots of different people and different cultures, I think it made it easier for me to not be pissed off with people or to empathize with difference and different types of attributes and skills. And when you're in that sort of vendor relationship, the clients are really they were when we were doing it, they just want you to build something. They don't really care how you do it. They just want it now. They want it cheap and they want it fast. And so it was a brutal relationship, right? Like it wasn't making anyone great software. But I did really enjoy that interplay of coming from that engineering background, kind of being a good sort of human engineer. Like I wasn't headphone on. A guy I used to work with literally put a hard hat on and said, when I put a hard hat on, don't talk to me. So he would sit there coding away. He'd put his hat on, and that was his sign to say, keep away from me. And I never had that desire to be insulated and just professionally. My partner will probably say you do that all the time at home. But
you walk 100 Ks, Tokes.
I take my time otherwise, yeah. So I think it probably did help that I enjoyed and could empathize with people, but had that sort of understanding of the miracle that this thing actually works. Yeah.
And is that how do you think you got the Xero job?
Well, the Xero job came after that, and I was going, well, I'm kind of sick of this vendor gig. Yeah. It's just soul destroying. I knew enough about software and at that point I was leading, I was the sort of development manager at Intergen, looking after all the developers there. And so I was into the way in which they worked and wanted to be in an environment where I could allow that craft that I'd fell in love with but wasn't doing professionally to thrive. And I thought, well, products, that's how you do it, right? You have a product and you can tell people whether you do this feature. You don't have to listen to them,
Yeah.
and you can kind of build this. Well, if we want to make it better, we'll do another release next week,
Yeah.
and we'll make that bit better. And so it felt like, and it's really interesting, right? Because I thought, well, it's utopia, right? For anyone who loves software, working on a product, it's great. You can just do what you want. And I just tell customers to go away. Turns out it's not quite that easy. And even in Xero's B2B, but we kind of thought about it as B2C because we were building for that person who was running their business, right? I remember when we got our first negative feedback. I was there in 2009, and probably a year at that time we were everyone's darling. It was all friends and family sort of things. There was a few, maybe 1,000 or so customers, and I remember we built this community website to get because we want to be the cool company that listens to our customers and gets their feedback and makes them feel heard. And man, it was like, I remember the vitriol that would come in on certain issues that we had or hadn't done, and it dawned on me that, man, okay, these aren't clients who are paying us a lot of money each month, but they have a massive voice, and I feel the pressure of their need and want to help them, but can't. And I almost felt at that point there were more constraints on me than in the vendor relationship, where it's kind of out in the open. It's like $100,000, build me a website, and I want it by Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's pretty simple rules, right? And you do what you can, and you cut all these corners. There's you want
something more, you have to pay for it.
So the mode of engagement's kind of easier, and that's even if it's soul destroying. Mm-hmm. But in the product sense, there's also, whether it's investors, whether it's customers you want, and if you're in a B2B business or B2 enterprise, it's just skyrockets even more because now it's not 1 in a million customers, it's 1 in 10, and they're each paying you $1 million.
Yeah.
And so you could lose 10% of your revenue if you don't do what that one big enterprise customer says. So now it's like, well, customer discovery kind of changes the dynamic. And I feel like in New Zealand, we could be the experts in B2B product. Because nobody else is doing, because we're so small, right? We have to do B2B in our own, if we're going to start, incubate local. We haven't got 350 million people like America does. Yeah. And the commentary coming out of America is very B2C focused.
Yeah.
And so I think we have it, and when listening to your guests, the way they spoke about, may not have thought they were talking about product, but I see everything through that lens. Yeah. They were saying things that were super wise that you would only say in a B2B environment, or that that you have to think differently.
Because it's funny, I saw you talk at Startup Grind or something, I can't remember what it was, and you said you love hiring product managers from like marketing or from like design or from other places because people don't realize how good they are at product.
Yeah.
What do you think is like? Why is that?
It's countering a trend that's happened over the last few years. So when I started product in 2009, not many people were doing it.
Before you even answer that question, what the fuck is product?
Yeah.
Everyone has a different take on like what product is. So the two ticket questions I want to get at today is what the hell is product? What is a product manager? What is the difference between a product owner and a product manager, right? Your 2 cents on that. And then another one I want to know is, if I send one more product manager into a CEO that says, I need my first product manager, and I go, are you ready? And they go, yeah, definitely ready. I'm like, are you really ready? Because I don't want to fuck this person over. And they go, yeah. And then they go, oh, nah, that's my job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Okay, so my definition of so I use the term product leader in a way that is not the trend at the moment. People often talk about product leaders as product people who manage other product people. That's how Americans refer to a product leader. But I am insisting on using that as the collective term for anybody who has a role leading product. You might be a product owner, product manager, VP, director of product, CPO. I think of you all as leaders, right? Yeah. And I do that very deliberately because a product owner is a leader. Mm-hmm. As much as in a different way to a CPO, but they're leading and influencing the hearts and minds of the people they're working with and the stakeholders that they're engaging with. And so my definition of the value of someone who is a product leader at any stage from product owner to CPO is that they are a value maximizer. And so they're maximizing the value of the product through the efforts of the teams that they work with. Mm-hmm. towards the strategic success of the company, which feels no one's going to challenge me on that. Like, yeah, okay, they make decisions and prioritize to create value in that product, right? Which a CEO might challenge that and go, well, I actually just want the thing to go faster. I know what we need to build, so that I don't want them to think about value. I just want speed. But that's a pretty easy one to get past, I think, if you start talking about it a bit more. But if you think about it, that idea of being a value optimizer is very different from what a lot of product owners and product managers are doing at the moment in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I believe, is that many are coming from the wrong background.
Yeah.
So they're coming from, and there are people who succeed coming from these backgrounds. So I don't want to make
technical backgrounds.
Well, it's actually not generally technical backgrounds. Most people who are attracted are coming from customer-centric roles. So they might be customer support.
Yeah.
They might be coming from a very solutions focus. So they're business analysts. So they like the idea of understanding the complexity of a business problem to help engineers build it. They might be coming from a design background where they like the idea of creating a thing that is delightful in all its forms. And so many of them are individual contributors in the success that they've had in previous careers. And so they come into a product role where they don't actually do anything. They don't make anything. They don't create anything.
Yeah.
It's not entirely true, but generally they're not there to create stuff.
You can't measure it easy, right?
And you can't measure it, but so my definition, you're measuring the value they're creating.
Yeah.
And they go, well, how do I make that? What document do I need to write?
Yeah.
Well, what does my roadmap look like to be valuable? Well, no, because the value you're creating is business value.
Yeah.
And it's not even product value, because product value has to result in business value. And so they now have to learn this whole other world that they've never been exposed to because they've just been brilliant executioners in their field. And so when I'm thinking about who would make great product people, I'm trying to look wider for people who have already exhibited leadership skills and experience influencing, dealing with difficult situations, dealing with conflict, dealing with people who disagree with you, but you've still got to hold your ground. That's the hard stuff. And if you can't do that, you'll get treated like a project manager by the CEO who still thinks they're running product.
Yeah.
And what you see happening will happen. And they won't be able to influence anything because the engineers are going, well, you don't know anything about technology. The CEO is going, well, you don't know what we need to build because I've been doing this for 50 years. I know exactly what my clients need.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just need to crack that whip and, I don't know, give me a Gantt chart.
Yeah.
So it's super easy to fall into that if you're not thinking about maximizing for value. It's very easy to fall into those anti-patterns of product.
So how do you then, if you're, like I'm thinking of one mate at the moment, right, who's had a couple of stints as a product manager. He's like a product manager evangelist, right? He talks exactly like you and the likes, but he seems to pick poor companies. I don't help him because I've said that,
I think it's on you.
Yeah. He picks like early stage companies where the CEO is playing the product, she or he, deep in the product. And I keep saying to him, be careful, and then he'll go in and he can't establish his line in the sand versus the CEO's line in the sand. And then the CEO seems to blame everything that goes wrong on him because he's like, well, I told you to come in and build this thing. And he's like, well, but, I'm trying to understand what the strategy of the business is so that I can line the product. And
I've oscillated on this one a little bit. I think generally I have the same advice for companies hiring their first product manager. So the typical pattern that happens in a company, and I think of it in terms of startups growing beyond startups, but it actually happens in banks in much the same way. I describe it differently, but the same thing happens. You start off as a team that is hugely cohesive, run by a founder who knows exactly what they want to do. They'll have a technical person in there who's leading the technology aspects of bringing this product to life and proving market fit. So the CEO is not trying to build it, and the CTO is happy for the CEO to direct where it needs to go.
And then when the person comes in,
and then so that happy family lasts for a while until the CTO now goes, well, I need to go faster, I need to do more, there's a lot of demands here, we've got our first few customers, there's a bit of pressure, got some tech debt, so they'll hire more people. In the meantime, the CEO is going, well, I need to hire some salespeople here because this is great. Well, things are going really well. And there's some marketing people. You've got the CFO on board. So they start building up these other functions, which end up being about 80% of your business, right? Like if you think 20% is over here. And so these two worlds start drifting apart. And engineers will start referring to the business.
Yeah.
the CEO will start referring to them not delivering faster, and you'll get this two sides of a business forming in generally unhealthy ways. And this is when they often go, well, I need that product person.
Yeah.
So they bring on someone maybe who is in their first product management gig, or even a product owner, someone who hasn't had much leadership experience, for example, but maybe is really smart at software, knows about software and building product and agile.
Into a segregated company.
Into a segregated company that really needs to be brought back into alignment.
Yeah.
And that it's super challenging even for someone very senior to do this. But if you're not that senior and you come into that environment, you're gonna not succeed. Most of the time, you're not going to succeed. So I don't think you have to go straight to bringing in a CPO at that level. I used to think bring a CPO in earlier, but I've subsequently felt now I recommend to CEOs who recognize themselves as being the product, the most senior product person in the organization, bring them staying in that role and learning more about what it means to be a product leader, not a founder, because they're different.
Yeah.
But bringing on quite a solid senior level product manager who's aspiring to be more, who might well grow into that CPO role, but knows they have to have feet on the ground and they've got to be feet in both camps. They can't just be, as Diana said, jazz hands. They actually have to do some stuff with the team, directly with the team, roll their sleeves up and, do some stuff rather than just say vision, strategy, off you go. And finding that first person's hard, and there's been lots of people who have tried and got spat out because the CEO wasn't quite ready to bring someone on when they really just wanted it to go faster. And so I've done this talk recently with Kiwi SaaS about establishing a Kiwi practice, a product management practice, and I think I think it's just really important that you get the right first product hire to be able to bring these things together in a way that doesn't end in tears.
And so leadership, what are the other fundamentals that you're looking for, like characteristics of a person?
Yeah.
Business nows?
I think so. Like I think understanding the realities of business and running a business is important, because the other common complaint that you sometimes hear first time new product people who come from different backgrounds is that they go, the business haven't got a strategy. How can I do my job if they don't have a strategy? And
I think that's fair. A lot of companies don't even know what a strategy is, right?
Well, it's fair. It might be a fair commentary, but you're the solution to it.
Yeah.
So you can't be victim to the absence of strategy. It's your job to extract it from the people.
I've heard you talk about this on a different podcast or video where I heard you say, well, take your findings in your first couple of months and say, my understanding, the strategy is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, play it back. Because most companies, even if there's no poster on the wall saying this is our strategy, which most companies don't have, to be fair, they have a strategy. They just haven't articulated that strategy clearly. Yeah. And in the beginning, I think it changes, right? And this is where a startup is different from another type of company, in that a startup has kind of got to be scrappy. It's got to have a primary thesis for their existence, and they're going to try a whole lot of things to see if they can make that stick, and then they can start evolving it, right? Once you establish market fit, the choices in front of you just go exponential, right? So you've got a product now, so you've got some weight behind you for a start, which stops you being able to do whatever you want. It's not like zero customers. Well, let's try this. Now you've got hundreds or thousands of customers who are using that, so you can't piss them off too much by pulling stuff out. And the strategy of, okay, we need to enter Australia, or we need to go to the US, or we need to, move to a different type of customer, and those decisions are much harder than those genesis moments where you've had years to think about your startup idea, maybe, and you've already honed it down. You've done discovery because you've been in that problem space, and so now you're just executing on something that might actually be quite tight and really good, and then you build it, and now your problem space just exploded on you again. Because you've proven that Genesis idea works, and now what do you do? And so that's why strategy is hard for founders, because they're not used to closing doors and saying, we're not going to go to Australia. We're going to focus on this type of customer in New Zealand for the next 6 months. Or we're going to focus on selling what we have rather than building more. They like to keep the doors open, because as a founder, as a new company, you want to try things fast and you want to fail fast. And so I think a product person coming in to help a founder needs to help them either adapt the way they think about evolving their company and the product that drives their company, or to stand aside and be the person that founder really trusts.
Do you, because you've now got a consulting company, right, or a product coaching business?
Yeah, I call it coaching. It's a weird. I mean, I try not to do consulting, but
I'd
coaching.
say thinking about it, definitely feels more coaching to me. Do you coach CEOs on what product is? Because I find a lot of the time they just have a generally this is my idea of what product is, but as soon as they hire a product manager that's asking the right questions, they're like, "What the fuck you want to know that for?"
So after I left 8i, I took some time off and thought, okay, I don't want to go deep on another company. 8i was tough.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, a whole other story. Xero was amazing but intense, formative in many ways. So I wanted to sort of, but I felt like I had built this community of product people since 2015, a product tank meetup that was growing. So there was this groundswell of people who wanted to get into a career that had product in its title. Yeah. And at the same time, this is around 2015, it felt like there was this growing awareness from founders and CEOs and senior leadership people that product people could help them.
Yeah.
So there was this supply and demand was starting to get really good, right? But neither side really fully understood what they were getting themselves into, right? So I thought, well, shit, I've been doing this since 2009. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've got lots of experience across different types of businesses. The ecosystem of Xero exposed me to startups that plugged into the Xero ecosystem. So I really enjoyed talking to those people. And it just was well connected in Wellington. I'd spent most of my career in Wellington. So I thought, I really want to, at the time I thought, I'm going to be an advisor to the superstars, be advisors to the Sharesies and the cool startups that were starting to come at the time. And I did a little bit of that, but it turns out that startups are actually, I'm going to annoy all your startup listeners, but it's easier in the same way that I described. The parameters are less, I think, than when you get bigger and complicated and weight behind you. There's just the human element, even if you just looked at the human element. It's not just a bunch of people who get on with the same vision and passion. Now you got opinions, right? Yeah. And so I ended up working with any company. It did include some startups. In fact, I did the numbers. I've worked with 60 companies in the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And 17 of them were what I would call startup. And again, I'm probably people who could answer this better, but when I think of a startup, I think somewhat pre-market fit. You're still exploring whether this thing's got a life.
Yeah.
It hasn't hockey sticked yet. Maybe you've had a little bit of funding, but you're still feeling your way.
Still in the weeds, right?
Still in the weeds a little bit, right? And so so there's a lot of that scrappiness going on still. So I reckon, around 17, 18 of my 60 clients have been in that space.
Yeah.
And typically I've been coaching the founder who's trying to think in a product way.
Yeah.
And then the other ones would be everything right up to a bank. But they all share this common thread of inflection point. And it might be funding that's come in. It might be awareness that what they're doing is not working, that they're not actually maximizing the value of the product through the efforts of the team towards the success of the company. And so product people are an answer to that problem, but they're probably articulating the thing that's not working differently. So when there's two halves of an organization that aren't gelling anymore, they're not going fast enough. They don't understand how important this stuff is now. Quickly, we need to get to the market because this sales opportunity is going to disappear next week. Yeah. They don't get it. They don't know how hard the shit is.
Well, they're not being communicated to.
Why it's like
important.
Different worlds, right? Yeah. And so I do a lot of when I coach an individual product person, before I accept the coaching engagement with say a CPO or a generally quite senior product people, I will explore whether we should do more group coaching with them and their stakeholders, in particular founder, CEO type, and CTO even. That can be a challenge, that relationship. Yeah. Because it's one thing to coach the CPO, but if they're in an environment or that there's a culture that's operating that's making it harder than it might be to get on the same page about how they could be more effective, then it makes coaching much harder. And so I try and look for opportunities to either go on a retainer where I will work with a company, a few hours a month, sort of, you know,
You're
light touch.
solving the problem, not putting a Band-Aid over the top of it, right?
Yeah, and I'll only do that if I'm not the person. So unlike, I think Diana was being a virtual COO,
Yeah.
and one of her engagements was being the COO for a period of time to set up some practices and to then potentially hand it off to someone else. I don't do that. So I always look for somebody I can work through.
Yeah.
So I still want to be the coach and an advisor to those people to help them create an amazing business and successful business through those sort of humans that are working within it. And so I try and do that, because I got into that, not trap, but early on in this business that I've created, I thought I needed an anchor client to pay the bills. And then I could sort of pick and choose the interesting bits, do more startup stuff that maybe they don't pay me as much, but I've got the anchor client. And I was essentially started as that virtual CPO for a company. And I really enjoyed it. Like, it was interesting, but it just pulled me in. Yeah. And it was impossible for me to get that distance. And I became part of the furniture in a way, which the value, and I have to remind myself sometimes about the value of what I do, because sometimes you go, I'm just talking shit, I'm just telling people what I think and what do I know, right? But
you must, like, your learning aptitude for product now must be immense after working with 60 different product companies, working with them, understanding their problems, understanding their challenges, understanding what's working well for them. And you like, to quote Diana, right, pattern matching now across all of them, and being able to, your vision and your aptitude of knowledge of product must be immense now.
Look, you mentioned that I walked the length of New Zealand. So I didn't do it because I was having some midlife crisis. I did it. It's like the 100K. It's just fuck, that'd be amazing. Imagine me walking the length of the country. And I finished it, and I didn't think I had any epiphanies. I thought, not that I was looking for any. I didn't think, oh my God, I see the world differently now. You know, that was amazing. I want to do it again. But I listened to a podcast while I was walking. Many podcasts I listened to. This is the only one I remember. And I don't remember the guy. The guy was talking about what your brain does in the second half of your life. Because the common narrative is that you lose your brain cells as you get older.
Yeah.
And your ability to learn new things, to go deep on something, reduces. You're no longer as sharp as you used to be. So it's just a small decline to the grave, which is deeply depressing, right? But his take on it was actually your brain changes as you get older, and it's able to do things that it can't do when you're younger. And so when you're younger, you're really good at picking up new things. I mean, learning a language. I mean, you're learning in computer programming and all these sort of things that you can go deep and focus and go, yeah, I'm going to be really good at that, right? When you're older, you're much better at seeing patterns. I don't want to comment on Diana's age, but that idea of seeing patterns and connecting dots that aren't obvious when you're in the middle of it, doing really well at the thing you're really good at as a 20-something.
Yeah.
That ability, and I only recognized it when I heard the person say it, because he then goes, you know, the sorts of things you can be really good at when you get older are teaching, coaching, advisory work, where you have to take that view from above and enjoy doing that and seeing the patterns. And I think it's kind of beautiful in a way, because as a kid, I love patterns as well. You know, like I did the Rubik's Cube, I studied maths and statistics, I did all these things which were that side of my brain. And I sometimes think that the coaching side only scratches half of my brain, and it's the aspects of what I do that sometimes are about this pattern matching and about clarity. Like there's something I get a lot of pleasure out of, turning complexity into something that you can see and typically visualize in a single diagram. Yeah. And I love that. And that I could never have done that when I was working in a company.
It's harder, right? Because your IP is that company, right? When you're consulting, and even me as a recruiter, I work with so many different startups. I do the same thing. Like I can see things, or I talk to people and I go, yeah, everyone's doing that. Like it's
but you don't see it when you're in it, right? Yeah, so I loved that. Obviously, I love the fact that my brain's not dying and that there's things it's doing now which it couldn't have done before, and that I'd managed to move myself in a position to take advantage of that.
Yeah. I like to think of it as we get older, our brain just retains the information that we care about, versus like now I probably don't know how to get around London anymore. I probably lost that, but I can go deep on the areas that I'm interested in. Like I can retain all that information.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And so you were pretty lucky at Xero, right? Like you had I say lucky, you all created your own luck, but you had Rod there who was product focused storytelling guy, who empowered you all to get on with it and do it right. Do you think that was a lot of the success, that relationship, or having someone like that in the business that empowers you to do that?
I talked to lots of people about their experience of Rod in those days, and everyone seems to have a different take on how it went. For me, I really enjoyed his clarity of vision and energy.
Yeah.
I never received the negative side to that. Of his, he could be scattergun, like do this. He's an ideas guy, right? The Rob bombs, coming around to an engineer's desk and sort of pointing at the screen, sort of stuff. So I didn't have to deal with that. Other people did, and they would take away a different sense from it. But I really love that. And the things that stand out in my brain, and you've probably heard me talk about this on other podcasts and stuff, but I love the fact that he would say, get up in an all hands meeting and say the product managers are the most important people in this business.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't love that as one of the founding product managers at Xero? And that was from very early on, before people were really talking about product management, right? So he would allow us to go up on stage and encourage us to go up on stage and represent the company at the Xerocons that we used to do around the world. And they were the highlight of my year, going and meeting all those customers. Ended up being, I don't know what it's like now, but it was thousands of accountants, right? You'd think, well, that would be a yawner, but actually really good.
Huge parties.
Oh, it was huge parties and just really energetic, excited people who wanted to take their profession into the modern age. And they were on the journey with Xero. It was very, it was just inspirational to be allowed to experience those moments with customers and be on stage and it was a privilege, right? Because I could just front the genius that was happening back in HQ.
Yeah.
And then bring some of that intel back to the team and sort of help us evolve the things we're doing. But it was a very enabling, and a lot of the companies I work with now and the product managers I work with now don't have that. And then I'll work with people at Xero who are complaining about something and going, you don't know how lucky you've got it.
Yeah.
Like Xero is an incredible place to work. And granted, I'm not working there, I haven't worked there for many years. But from what I hear, the amount of freedom and latitude people have to express the way they want to increase the value of the efforts of the team towards the success of the company, the reason for being, they have a lot of freedom to explore ways of doing that in ways that other companies won't when you've got a very bearing.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about that. I feel like Robin Hood, I like to steal from the rich and give to the poor. So I use Xero as a bit of a hunting ground personally and never recruit for them and then give those good people away. They've got that knowledge to other little small startups and get on with my merry men. But Xero, if you want to do true product, go and whack at Xero. You really get to hone your product craft.
But it's kind of sad in a way that we only have them and PushPay, TradeMe. There's not many at that scale, right? Across New Zealand. And another interesting thing I looked at was 5 years ago, I thought, where are all the CPOs? Where are the executive level product leaders of these amazing companies that I imagine are around? And they were, and I thought, I'm really connected in the product. I had 1,000, 2,000 people in my meetup and I don't know, there's 2 CPOs in it. And it turns out that at that time, there were only about 30 5 years ago at that the highest level, not the founders, but they were specialized product leaders as CPOs. And now we have 150 across New Zealand. But a lot of those 150 are from, they're a founder who calls himself CPO. Yeah. There's a little bit of that. I've tried to weed some of those out. But there's the true CPOs at the scale of Xero, there's not that many around.
I reckon there'd be 25, 30. Because I can tell you anytime I'm looking for a CPO for a client, I know them all off the top of my head.
So I literally have a database of every single one of them and the history of them back to whenever they started getting into product. So it's like really interesting trends in terms of the growth and reduction of they're reducing in number recently. So in the last 2 years, you've seen a real drop in the number.
What's your take on the CPTO? Because that seems to be quite common at the moment, people hiring the chief product and technology officer.
Well, it's interesting. I talked to Owen Evans. Well, he mentioned this as an aside because he saw me as that, not by title, but I had this technology and product leadership role when I first joined. I wanted to be the development manager. I took on this product mantle. And
because you came into Xero as the dev manager, right?
I think it was called product development manager at the time. Yeah. And so I wanted to work with developers on a product and be a leader around that. And then it turned into this product role beyond just the developers. But for a long time, all the developers reported to me, all the testers, some of the designers. There was a lot of people management going on there. But he said to me, do you reckon that was a problem, that you were over technology and product? And I was going, I never really thought that I was over both those things. I thought I was mainly over product, and that I just let you guys, I trusted you guys to make good decisions. And so that taught me two things. One is that people have a different view of yourself than you have your own of yourself, right? Like that, for him, it was a thing, and I was oblivious to it. So that's interesting. And then the other thing is that, I don't think you can and should try and do both those things generally. I mean, there are some special people who can, but the CPO role in particular is the only other role, or should be the only other role in the company outside of the CEO that can influence every aspect of the company.
Yeah.
Everyone else is in their lanes, right?
Yeah.
Your sales, your marketing, your technology, finance. That's why product's so hard, because you're right in the CEO's lane or the founder's lane, and they're going, or everybody's lane, because everybody thinks they know the best thing to do for the product at the right time. So you're right in the deer in the headlights of all these other people who think they're running product and have the best idea. And the only other person who's like that is the CEO, but they're the founder, or they have the authority to be able to say, well, I'm not doing that. Whereas the CPO doesn't. So if you have to do that and balance the realities of having a high performance technology capability, I don't know how you can do those things and not lean towards one or the other and do one a disservice over the other. You have to have that tension.
Yeah. I think that's good to have that natural tension, right? But you just need, like what you say, the right product leader there that knows how to be Switzerland, and bring,
because
bring
I thought,
together.
I said to, I don't know if I said this to Owen, but in my head I was thinking it. I was going, you and Craig Walker, you were running technology, not me. I didn't tell you how to run technology.
He said to me on the podcast.
Oh yeah, what did he say about me, bastard?
He said some of my favorite times at Xero was interviewing with Tokes. He was like, just because both of us, you would come in with your product, he would come in from technology, and you just had this great style back and forth, And he said that was some of his favorite times.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's another moment where I have had these moments where I don't know how I come across. Sometimes I think I'm one thing. Probably everyone has that. But
I thought you were an arrogant prick when I first met you.
But I had.
But I was a recruiter, and you were Xero, and you were like every recruiter was trying to get into Xero back in the day.
Oh, okay, let it go. Yeah. So I've met people who I've interviewed in the past who I really rate and thought, I'm really glad we hired them, and they said that they were terrified in the interview. And I go, I don't feel like I'm terrifying in an interview. I feel like I ask questions and I'm curious and I want to challenge you a little bit, and so like I've a number of times in my career I've had to kind of take a reflective look at myself and go, how am I come across here? I
thought I remember you wrote this blog. Was it at Intergen or at Xero? And it was about how to interview or
possibly yeah.
And so Helena Gannon at the time used to send it. So she sent it to me and she was like, if you want to send candidates to interview over Tokes, they should look at this.
This is a cheat sheet.
And it was pretty much
I need to see that. I haven't seen that.
It was a blog you wrote on your interview process. So you just told people, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you through, and these are the things that I'm looking for. And it was, for me, it was like really great, because it was like, there shouldn't be any this arts and mystery in interviews, right? It should be, hey, this is what we're trying to get out of you. If you have those skills, great. If you don't have those skills, probably find somewhere else,
I mean, in interviews, the only thing that triggers me in interviews that maybe turns me into someone who's not as nice, but is like if someone doesn't answer my question.
Yeah.
Like I asked my partner about this. I said, man, I had this situation where I was interviewing someone and I asked them 3 times. I really wanted to know what they thought about something. And they kept diverting and not asking and answering something else, and I'd keep pulling them back nicely. Like I was nice about it. I said, "Oh, yeah, that's cool, but how do you feel about this?" And I was saying, was that unfair of me? I judged them for? I said,
well, they're just deflecting, right? Because they can't answer that question. And
So I didn't want to be the guy who wants the person I'm interviewing to be me.
Yeah.
Because I can shoot from the hip all day long, right? And so I didn't want to be thinking, oh, well, I just expect them to give their best shot and just sort of tell me what they thought. Give me your reckons. Like, I'm not going to judge you on it. Right? That's how I would want to be received. And so I didn't want to be putting that on them, but I thought it was still fair. I still think it's fair that they either say, look, I'm not comfortable answering that. I haven't thought about that enough. I don't think I'm comfortable answering. That would be fine because they've answered my question by saying I'm not comfortable answering it. Saying, I'm not really sure, but this is what I'm thinking. I haven't thought about it deeply, but where I think I'd go, I think I'd explore this. And so that would be good. I'm not looking for an answer.
Yeah.
Like I don't actually want you to shoot from the hip and just give a rough answer. Yeah.
This is probably the most important interview information that you can ever give anyone, and I give it out all the time, is that people shit themselves when they hear a question that they don't necessarily have any war stories, because we're told, use the STAR technique, situation, task, action, result. What did you personally do in that situation? And their brain goes to, oh, fuck, I've never done that, and so they try and deflect the question. Where like sometimes the best answer is, I've never been in that situation. I can give you an example about what I might do, but I have never been there, right?
Yeah.
And just be honest about it, because people just go, oh, okay, awesome, move on. It's...
Yeah, it's just being about authentic, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to get some sense of the person in those conversations.
Yeah.
And and for product people, it's even more important because they're always going to get tough questions.
Yeah.
They're going to be dealing with a lot of pressure, and so if they can't handle it in an interview, then it's going to be tough to be in that job.
Yeah. Hey, so tell me about Product Aotearoa. What are you doing with this?
So a couple of years ago, I guess now, we, as part of the Product Tank, the meetup that I started in 2015 with Trent Mankelo, grew and grew and grew. Auckland sort of rebranded and came on board. We've now got 5 Product Tanks around the country, 8,000 members in total.
Wow.
So there's this whole community that was connecting and communicating with each other. We were starting to run unconferences, and so it felt natural. There was a natural kind of group of people in this community who were constantly talking about what can we do for the community, how can we collaborate together, how can we do these things better. And Anthony Mata up in Auckland was probably the main motivator for doing this. So he suggested creating the society, a not-for-profit society, to wrap itself around this growing community to try and mature it, help it, support it for the betterment of New Zealand business. And so we set about doing it, and it's still very early days. We're still trying to work out how we support this community beyond what we're doing, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, nice. It's hard work running communities, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I enjoy it, and I think of the community as the third pillar of my company, and so I think of it as coaching, advice, and community.
Yeah.
They're the 3 things that I do. I don't monetize the community, but it's part of my brand. It's part of being involved with the people I want to help and want to support, want to understand. And so it's really important to me. And it's funny, right? Like I look back, and this is not a new thing. It's like I used to do it, for the Microsoft stuff and for the user groups and
you've
the
done
technology.
It for as long as I've known you.
I really enjoy it. And so there's something in my character that likes to help others, which is why I think I moved away from the individual contributor stuff of being an engineer, because I enjoyed the helping other people. I enjoyed mentoring and coaching and supporting people in their careers and helping them do amazing things. And so I guess I've modeled my business around that as well.
Yeah, I don't see you at prefab much anymore though, mate.
No, I don't come into town as much. The whole COVID thing sort of ruined my rhythm a little bit. I'm probably only in town once or twice a week.
Every time I walk past prefab, I look up and see his Tokes sitting there at the table. No.
It is still one of my favourite haunts to sit and have a coffee. Good coffee, good buzz, good white noise of people, which helps me think.
Yeah.
It's good. But it's weird, right? Because I go there. I used to go there a lot, and so there's this. To me, the criteria for a hangout to work is I've still got to be anonymous.
Yeah.
And not to the people, if you pop in, and I often meet people like that, and that's great. I love that, those incidental connections. But when I start to recognize the staff, not that they're not lovely people, but I just don't want to be known. I want to sit there and not be noticed by the staff. And that's kind of, if you spend too long somewhere, you can kind of be, they probably just think I'm really rude because I don't have long conversations with them, but it's because
it's your downtime, right?
It's kind of my think time, and you can go to a website where you literally get the sound of a cafe to help you think, or an airport, or a schoolyard. There's this sort of human white noise that there's science around. It helps you think, and I really, some people like hearing a pin drop. I really like a hubbub around me, and that really helps me think.
Yeah, I'm the same. I need to have something in the background, even to fall asleep, just to be able to quieten my mind down.
Yeah, nice.
So then what's next? Obviously you work with 60 companies. Is there types of companies that you would like to work with? Is there something that the Tokes brand, can do?
So there's a bit of you touched on it before actually. So this group of 155 executive product leaders, I'd love to support them more because they're not involved in the community, the product community. They don't contribute generally to the product community.
Yeah.
My theory is that they feel outsiders to product because they've come from different backgrounds.
And they're nervous about saying something stupid.
Potentially, I need to find out more about that. But I think they hold the key to us upping our game across product and helping those people coming into it to understand more about business, about leadership, about influence, about some of those things that they probably just take for granted because they've come from these other senior roles.
Yeah.
And so I want to work with them to help them understand some of the theory of product and product leadership. So the translation of business leadership into product leadership, which I think is very doable for those sorts of people. And so I'd love to be able to find opportunities to do that with more of them. And I'm coaching a few of them already. So I do that, but there's only 150 of them. That's not a particularly strong business model. So a lot of that has to be I just want to work with some of those people. But your question before about do I work with CEOs, the next evolution of that support of that group is to work with the group of CEOs and founders and the people about to hire their next product people, or who want to critique their product organization or be more connected to why are they doing it that way? Why do they just keep wanting to talk to customers all the time? Why don't they just do it right? Like I think there's something in supporting that layer who typically hire the CPO, right? Helping them see product in a different way than they might do it now.
Yeah, and preparing for that hire, right? Like getting out of the fucking way.
Yeah, and so either coaching directly those founders and CEOs to help them be better virtual CPOs, or helping connect them with the right people at the right time. I think I'll play in that space more because I like that end of the game. I don't enjoy not enjoy it, but I don't work with at the PO level, or the single product manager, single team level as much. And there's better people to help them with some of the practices.
I think they're naturally like lower level, I shouldn't say lower level, but like early starting career POs and PMs, their appetite for knowledge, their thirst is amazing. Like I see it in your Slack channels and things, like everyone's asking questions all the time. But where the knowledge really needs to get to is the people like the CPOs who might be too scared to jump in and ask a stupid question or are so busy that they haven't got the time to be able to share, knowledge. That the CEOs, that's where you can really help people.
Yeah, like the best topics we've had at our meetups, well, I think they're the best topics, are where we get somebody in who talks about a topic that doesn't have product in the title, right? Like we had Stuart von I want to say it in Dutch, I speak Dutch, so Stuart von Rij, I think you'd say his name, and he came in and talked about, he's a negotiation coach, I think he calls himself, but he's also a communications coach. So he talks about how to have tough conversations. And so we got together and I said, you should have taught that. That's totally what product people need to be good at, right? And so we retitled his talk something around wrangling the hippo, so the highest paid person's opinion, right? And so he sort of changed his talk to that and some of the techniques of having a conversation with anyone who you disagree with or who is on a different wavelength. And I really enjoy it. I don't know what I talk to enough
I would
people.
enjoy that shit.
It was really useful. And so I think we could probably do more in that community, bring those CPO voices in, the founder voices in, I hired a product person for the first time, it didn't work, this is why. Those conversations would be really interesting to help people understand if they do aspire to be in these senior roles.
Yeah.
What does it take? What do you need to know? Where do they need to upskill? And I think Product Aotearoa in general is going to be part of that. Like the vision of that non-profit is actually identical to my own.
So you should look into what the guys, I'll send you the link afterwards, but there's a guy in the UK who runs all the recruitment conferences, and he's created a recruitment top 100 where he gets what are the top 100 recruiters in the UK, and then they get together, they meet, they share ideas, they can speak at conferences and the likes. But to get into that group, it's almost like a bit of a challenge to get into that group. You have to have some runs on the board already. But what they're doing is phenomenal because the knowledge the sharing is fantastic across all these businesses. And I think with the product, the CPO level, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do it at the CPO. It's just the numbers are small. So it's like getting a critical, I was talking with a coach recently from America, and he was talking about doing that with senior leaders in California. And he would have, there's just thousands of them. They're just walking down the street, right? Like there was these CPO dotted around the country, and it's slightly less dense, and also it's very different being a founding CPO, the only product person, versus Anna Curzon or something, running hundreds of product people in an organization. Yeah. So being able to cohort them up reduces that number even more. So I'm trying to work out how can I, because I'd love to do that. Yeah. How can I help connect them to each other and to the broader community?
Are they naturally competitive people, product people?
I don't think so. I maybe at that executive level, maybe the more. I haven't noticed anything about that. Certainly not at the people who come to the user groups are very supportive of one another. And there's been this really beautiful shift away from going to the young conferences that we've been running or the meetups and being a consumer going, I need to learn. Yeah. And there's been this shift over the last year or two of people increasingly giving back and going, I know some stuff now. And so there's this emboldenment, I think, that the community's given them to go, well, I should know this shit. I've got an opinion I'm willing to share, and I want to see more of that.
I'm all for that. Stop the fucking tall poppy shit.
If
you've got some knowledge, share it. Be empowered to do it. Yeah. Cool, man. So thanks so much for coming on. If you've seen the podcast, you probably know how I sort of wrap things up with a sort of final question. Yes. Well, it's a good test to see if you listen to the end of the podcast.
Know, I did.
Yeah, nice. And so what makes you happy then, mate?
There's two things that make me super happy. Being in nature is a big part of my life. Like multiple times a week, I'll be in the bush behind Eastbourne. I'll go out on treks. I just love being alone, often alone in nature. So it's my thinking time. It's my recharge time. So that makes me very happy to be in those situations. And it helps with what I also get a lot of joy out of, which I touched on before, around taking complexity and articulating it in a clear way, which is all about products, because it's hard. It's tough shit, right? Like all the thousands of things you can do.
One of the hardest jobs.
How do you create a narrative that's concise and simple from the noise and complexity? And I love this openness my mind gets when I'm out there in nature to be able to join these dots, these old neurons in my brain. Yeah. Create these connections and these pathways to articulating a concept that I've been thinking about for years potentially. And so nature gives me that ability to do the other thing I really love, which is taking that complexity and articulating it visually often in something that I can share and can be the start of a conversation.
Awesome, man. And you know what I love about when you do that is you often share it straight away. Like I see you online or you...
And in a community, we're running out of time, but I share stuff that I've half-formed ideas in the community now, which is a closed, it's not really, it doesn't go out in the wild. And I get really good critique from an increasing number of people. There's no, I can't say no to Tokes, but they give it to me and sometimes I'll ignore it. And other times I'll totally take it on board and change it. So that's been, for me, that it's hard for me to ask for help sometimes. And so that's a good way for me to get that feedback and help from people in a constructive way. So that's satisfying that community didn't exist 6 years ago.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Oh, well, thanks so much for coming on, man. That was really good. And then time went so fast. I can't believe.
Yeah, appreciate
Cheers,
it.
man.
Thanks
Good
for
to
the
see
invite.
you. So no doubt Tokes is now walking back to a forest somewhere because he's just spent a lot of time talking to me and he's off thinking about pattern matching and solving some problems. And so I hope that he did exactly the same for you by helping you connect some dots together there, understand what product is and understand what his concept of product leaders is. I really enjoyed the chat. I hope you did as well. Please subscribe and like and share and all those good things. Thank you.
This podcast is produced by John Otaka from Empire Films.